most welcome. Welcome to our first MiniWorkshop focused on project design. Please introduce yourselves in chat as we are waiting for others to join. Your name, nationality, where you live, and something fun about you. And please share your email and WhatsApp number if you would to be in touch to send you more information. As we're waiting for others, please introduce. And the purpose of our session today is to help you to develop your project design skills and support you to apply for GRYN project funding. And this is our agenda. We have welcome and introductions, overview of project cycle, step 1 assessment, step 2 project design, completing GRYN project funding application form, explaining your ideas in project documents, and case study the vision project. Please remember to mute yourself and ask questions in the chat. Let's all learn from each other and have fun. Now I want to hand over to Simon, my colleague. Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Farida. As I'm Marotulong, I'm the advocacy coordinator at the Global Refugees Network. I would like to welcome all of you to our session today. So I'm going to tell us briefly about what who GRYN is, what we do, and who we are. So GRYN is an independent refugee-led network that supports young refugees to develop their capacity, empower themselves, help each other, and lead initiatives in their own community to respond to the community needs and advocate locally, nationally, regionally, and globally for changes that they feel are important to them. So GRYN is led by refugee youth leaders with experience in global policy, advocacy, and community activism. So in the leadership of GRYN, we're made up of young people, just as I said before. All of us have displacement background. So our coordinator is called Fonny, and she's based in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm the advocacy coordinator based in Kampala, Uganda. Our gender diversity coordinator is Farida, who is based in Stockholm, in Sweden. Our RILO coordinator is Bart, is based in Zimbabwe. Our networking and capacity coordinator is Ibrahim, and is in Morocco. Our communication team is led by Laura and supported by Ryan. Laura is based in Ecuador.
Simon? I think Simon might be experiencing some connectivity challenges, but I can just pick up from where he left it off, and we can continue the conversation. If he's able to join, we can pick it up from there. I think you've met all the rest of it. We have Laura, we have myself, we have Bart, who is from Congo but based in Zimbabwe. We have Ibrahim, who is from the Central African Republic but based in Morocco. And then we have Kate, who is our mentor, who's based in Canada. I hope I've not forgotten anyone in this particular the particular team that we're working on. Next slide, please. As Simon has mentioned, GRYN has put out a call for project proposals that is really focused on supporting young refugees in the actions that they're taking within their community. And these are either actions that are led by young refugees who've come together, or within their community, how an existing organization that has been working to sort of like respond to the different aspect of what the challenges that they're encountering in their community. Why we've put out this call is so that we can help other young refugee leaders like us to strengthen their work by looking at finding practical ways of providing financial support, capacity building, as well as advocacy support. In the call for proposals for 2022, what we have put out essentially is we've put out, you can apply for funds between $500 to $5,000 being the maximum amount of what you're able to apply for this particular, for the particular grant. Next slide, please. You'll see that in the call for proposal that we've put out as well, there are some criteria that is really important for us, and criteria that we will use this criteria in selecting of the project. You'll see that we've explained that when you're applying for this particular proposal, for this particular call for proposal, there's an age limit whereby we'll be accepting proposals from young people between the ages of 15 to 30. We've put other criteria such as the project definitely has to have valid impact in your community. We've also put another criteria whereby either it's not your individual project, but it's a group it's a project that you're working on with other young people, for instance. And also, really importantly, that this particular proposal, if you have a group that is registered, you can apply for it. If you have a group that is not registered as well, you can also apply for it. So the criteria really break down in terms of who is eligible, young people 15 to 30. They have to be in the countries where they're seeking asylum. It's not your own individual project, but it's a project that you has impact in the community, and you're also working with other young people in your community. Which regions can apply? Essentially, all the different regions can apply, and we also highly encourage young refugees who are based in the Asia Pacific, the MENA region, as well as the Latin America to apply for this particular proposal as well. And also within the Africa region as well, we're encouraging all of you to apply. So really, as you open the different links that have been shared, sit down and look at the criteria and see if you fit all the different criteria. So last year, we also put out the first call for proposal, and we worked with 22 groups who received funding from 500 all through $5,000 US. And we've put together a short video just to highlight some of the experiences they had from the first call for proposal. So I'm going to invite the communications team to just share with you a quick overview of how the first call for proposal looked like and some of the groups that were involved. When we say RILO, this is a refugee youth-led organization. So the acronym we're using is RILO, and you'll keep on hearing us referring to either GRYN, who is us, and then RILO, which are the refugee youth-led organizations. So thank you. Over to you, Rahel Daris.
life-changing.
Collaboration.
Inclusion.
Empowerment. Equality.
Prolific.
Pour nous, ça a été responsabiliser et autonomiser les jeunes leaders.
Supportive.
Global Refugee Youth Network is empowering.
GRYN is all about opportunities.
The GRYN experience has been impactful. You cannot imagine how many lives you have reached out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meldaris. I don't know if my colleague Simon is back, but I can continue. As you see, this is just a video that we put together celebrating the success from the other young people who applied in the first call for proposal, and they were able to get the support to amplify the solutions that they were needing in their community. We're expecting a lot of application, and definitely with this, this also means that we will be reviewing all these applications with care in order to ensure that we assess all the different applications that young people will make. And more importantly, we also want to make sure that as you're applying for this application or this particular call for proposal, we want to make sure that as you make your application, we are able to also understand the ideas that you've shared. We need to understand what the problem is, what the challenges is, what your solution is all about, and also what the cost implication that is involved in it. In the call for proposal that has been shared, you will find access to 3 documents, and these are the documents that you can see on your screen currently. The first document on the left side is the actual application form. So the application form contains all the questions that you will be responding to, and it's really important that you complete it. You have to complete it so that we're able to fully understand what your project is all about, and to also have your project considered for funding. The second document, which is at the top on the far right, is the GRYN project template. This particular project template includes just a section that has a very small budget where you can outline the budget aspect of what you want to do or the activities that you want to undertake. But the first section of it really talks about what are you trying to do? What is your project all about? And you will need to also fill that out, this additional document, so that you can submit this as so that we can also help to we can understand what you're working on. This particular document will help you to organize your thoughts. It will help you to think from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, and why it's really important to work around that. The third document, which is on the bottom left, is the budget template, or the budget that the document that we're using for the budget. The ones that we've shared in the call for proposal, it's very detailed, and it has formulas that will automatically calculate all the different things that costing that you will have. If you're working on a computer, these formulas, you'll be able to access all these particular formulas, and you'll be able to see as it automatically calculates. If you're working on your phone, you might not be able to fully see all the different formulas that have been included. But at the end of it, in case you're not able to use this particular budget, you can also submit a budget that you have written down on your own. And these templates are really important to help to guide you to sort of like see how you can respond to some of the questions that we've asked. Throughout this session, we will provide you some practical tips on how to complete the application. And we will also talk about the concept of project management and also and the different tools that we've just highlighted. But before we get to that section, I would want us to first of all pause and talk about where do you get this from. So we have a quick video just highlighting where you actually get these particular forms and what you need to do to download these particular forms. Right, Darius, over to you. Thank you very much, Raila Darius. Again, just to provide a quick recap. In the chat, we'll be sharing the links on where you can access all the different call for proposals. So the first thing that you need to consider and you need to think about as you're applying for your call is access the link first. Once you access the link, you should be able to access it in different languages. So we have the application available in Arabic, we have the application available in Spanish, French, as well as English. Select the language that you prefer. After this, it'll take you to the next segment where you'll be able to download the call for proposal, and the call for proposal has all the different guidelines as well as all the different documents that I have just highlighted, which is the application form, the budget template, the work plan, as well as the project document, and we'll slowly go over them as we have the rest of the session. Then, after you've done this, you need to submit your application. The deadline for submission is 30th of October, so you need to also take that into account and work through your application. Make sure you also engage with your group as you're filling out the questions that have been asked in the application. Once this is done and you hit submit, you'll be able to edit your application until 30th of October. So if you've already submitted your application, for instance, and through the mini workshop, you realize I did not respond to this particular question appropriately, you have the opportunity to go back and edit that particular section. But this will only be open until 30th of October. After the deadline, the form will be closed and will not be able to edit any of those sections that you have already submitted. The last stage is that because we're, as I've mentioned, the call is a very global call, and we're expecting a lot of proposals that will come in. So once you've submitted, we'll ask you to just please wait patiently as the GRYN team looks through the proposals that you've submitted, read them, and then respond to you. So that's a really important aspect of what you will need to do as we prepare for the call for proposal. Today, we'll, just as I've mentioned, for this workshop today, we really want to focus on concept of project management. We want to understand and we want to talk through some of the tools that we've just talked about, the templates that we've mentioned, as well as the tools that will help you to plan the project, either for this particular call for proposal or even in the future. It's really important for us to really understand when you're thinking about a project, when you're thinking about responding to maybe a call for proposal or even responding to the challenges in your community. What are some of the things that you need to take into account? Next slide, please. And how we're going to do this is that we're going to spend some time really understanding the concept of the project cycle. As we continue with this session, in case you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try to respond to them throughout the session, and also at the end of the session, we'll try and take all the questions that you've shared and respond to them. The second thing is that we have some activities here and there, and it's always good that as we're learning new things, if there's a quick activity, we can also engage and we can use the chat to just sort of like respond to the different questions or activities that we have lined up within this particular session. As you think about the project you're leading or the solution or whatever initiative you have in your community, it's also really important to see how it fits within the project cycle. Designing and managing a project has multiple steps, and different organizations have different ways of getting to the final stage of the project cycle. But basically, when organizations are working through the different stages, they follow these 4 steps. This first step is assessment. The second step is the project design. The third step is the implementation. And then the fourth step is the reporting. So I'll just give us a quick breakdown of each stage and then tell us what we will be focusing on with this session today. So step 1 is really on analyzing and trying to understand your context, the problems as well as the different vulnerabilities that exist within your community, for instance. So the first step in any project, you want to understand what exactly is the problem. The second stage is the project designing. And with the project designing, basically what you're trying to do here, you're trying to look at outlining the solution or the aim. What is the aim of this particular project? Or what are you trying, what solution do you have? And as you're thinking about the solution for this particular project, you're also thinking about what activities can I undertake to be able to meet this particular solution? Or you're also trying to be very clear about, I want to do all these activities. This is the problem from step 1, then step 2, you're trying to understand, to sort of like plan yourself, plan the activities, have more clarity on the budget. And then after you have that, you move to step 3, which is really on the implementation, where you now practically do what you've said you're going to do. And then the final stage is the reporting stage. And at this stage, this is where you put together your documents in terms of your financial report, in terms of the lessons that you've learned, in terms of any other documents that you have that is relevant to the study. And then this is something that then you will share back with, either if you're applying for a proposal, you will share back with the donor or even the community, so that the community can understand, you said you were doing this, this is what you did, and then you implemented, and now you're reporting back and telling them, this is what we were able to do. So it's really on the accountability bit. For our session today, we'll be focusing on just 2 steps. Next slide, please. We'll be focusing on step 1, which is the assessment. And then we will focus on step 2, which is the project design. But before we even get to sort of like dissecting and understanding what step 1 on assessment is and what step 2 on project design is, I know most of us have some experiences or even lessons that you've learned. And we also want to hear from you, from the projects that you're leading, for instance. Could you maybe share, when you're thinking about the project design aspect of it, how did you identify maybe a challenge in your community? What did you do? And what lessons did you learn? So I'd invite all of us, if you're able to use the chat, we'd ask you to share with us maybe a positive experience or lesson you have learned with designing your solutions, the solutions that you're leading in your community. And also if you have any question for us or the group in relation to the first 4 steps, I'll also be able to take this question. So maybe let's take just a quick minute, think about the project you want to submit to the call for proposal or the project that you're leading currently. What is one of the lessons you have learned, or is there any experience when you think about all the basic things I have just mentioned? So let's take 1 quick minute and I'll read through the chat. You can also raise your hand and we can give you 1 minute to just briefly say something. As you're thinking and writing, in your day-to-day interaction, or trying to solve the challenges in your community. What would you say is a positive lesson you have learned? What would you say is a positive experience? And if, in case there are also negative ones, please feel free to share them in the chat as well. And in case anyone has raised their hand, I'll ask Laura and Rahil Daris to support with that as well. And maybe to also make sure we understand it and we're comfortable with it, I'll start with an example. I think when you're thinking about your experience in implementing activities, one thing as you're assessing and you're trying to understand your community, you need to know who is in your community. One positive experience that I have had, or a lesson that I have learned along the way, is that it's really important to know who is in your community. So for instance, if I want to do a project on young girls or young people with disability, I learned that it's really important to think about the diversity as the first aspect. And then the second thing I learned was that you need to speak to them so that they can be able to tell you this project is something that we need, or this project is something that we don't need. So this is just a quick example, and feel free to share them in the chat. I see Patience says, understanding the beneficiaries and identifying their needs and wants. True. It's really important to understand your beneficiaries and to see what their needs are. So that's sort of like a same experience. We can move on and feel free to continue sharing in the chat, but as we go through the workshop, we'll be able to have a better understanding of this. Going back to our slide, we'll use this time to, of course, learn from each other and learn from each other's experiences, and also see as we're working through our project, what are some of those practical things that we need to do. As I've mentioned, today we'll be focusing on, within the project cycle, we'll be focusing on step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is on the assessment. Assessment is very important, is a very, very important step. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the purpose of assessment is to help you analyze and also understand your community. Assessment helps you to know what is the specific problem in your community, and it will also help you to focus on the different vulnerabilities that exist maybe in your community. Once you have that clear, once you have the clear understanding of your community, then it becomes easier to describe the context, as well as to also explain the specific problem that your community is facing, for example, in a project application or in a call for proposal, because you already understand your context and you understand all the things that is needed in your community. Funders traditionally will look at this and they try to understand the problems based on what you're saying, because then they might not be there. They don't live in that particular place. So with step 1, you're really trying to describe in a very clear way to the donors that this is my community, these are the challenges we're facing, and this is why this is important. Assessment is also important because it will inform the type of activities that you will plan, or activities that you will implement, and how you will implement them. The activities that you plan should be appropriate for your community, as well as they should work to solve the challenge or the problem that you have explained being the major problem in your community. And of course, as you're thinking about the problem and the solution and how to work around it, you'll also think about the other sensitivities that comes with it, such as age, gender, nationality, or ethnicity, or even disability. So these are some things that you also need to think about as you're describing your problem. Today, we're going to learn about some tools that we can use, or you can use with your groups to really understand, to analyze all this, analyze your community or conduct an assessment in your community to be able to describe your problem in a very clear way. On your screen right now, what you're seeing is we'll spend some time taking a look at community mapping. That's one tool that we'll go deeper into. We'll use the problem tree analysis as well. And then we'll use the vulnerability assessment, the third tool, to sort of like just have a clear understanding of how do we actually do step one, which is on assessment. Next slide, please. Community mapping, I think as we're describing all this, let's link it as well to our experiences and also the things that we're currently doing and how this will help you to answer the questions that you'll find within the call for proposal. You already know quite a lot about your community, and I can't say that I know more about if you're living in Uganda, I cannot say I know so much about your community. I don't live in Uganda, so I don't have a clear understanding about your community. But because you live in your community, then you have a better understanding of your community, and you're able to describe your community in a much more deeper way where I will not be able to describe it. This first tool, the community mapping tool, is just going to help us walk through some questions, and it will help us to draw a map or have a good understanding about our community to show the different groups and where they live and where the services are also located. So the first thing that when you're thinking about describing your community, you have to think about where is your community. You have to ask yourself a lot of questions. The first one can be, where is it located? You're talking about your community. Where is it located? Is it in a camp? Is it in a settlement? Is it in maybe in Uganda within a camp? So you need to think about all these particular different aspects. The second thing you also ask yourself is in terms of accessibility. Are you able to, do you have good accessibility? Is it in terms of connection? Is it accessible? Is it remote? Are you not able to access it? So you think about your community in that particular aspect. Then the second thing you also need to think about when, as you're thinking about describing your community, you also need to think about what is the population and who or how many people live in this particular community. Are they refugees? Are they host communities? Are they IDPs? So you need to think about all these different aspects of who is in your community. Then you also need to think about where are they from? Because you're conducting a community mapping. You're trying to understand your community in-depthly. So you're thinking about where are they from? Is it in terms of country of origin or also in terms of ethnic groups? You don't need to document all the details that you will find there, but it's most helpful to gather information and then share the information that is relevant. So for example, if your project or an idea that you have is relating to young people in your community, and a large portion of your community is the young people, then it would be appropriate for you to share information about the young people, because your project is really looking at young people. So you already have the information about who the young people in your community are, how many they are, where are they based? Are they in the camps? Are they in urban areas? What ethnicity do they have? What other vulnerabilities do they have? So you sort of like understand all the different things, or you have a better understanding. Or if someone asks you a question, can you tell me about your community? You're able to say, my name is so-and-so, I come from a community in this particular country or this particular location. We are a population of XX, and we're able to do that. So the mapping really helps you to understand that. And then you also have to, the other thing you also need to, as you're describing your community, you also need to understand what are the challenges and what are the strengths. I believe in all communities, there's some strengths and there are also some challenges. So like you can ask yourself and your group members questions such as, what is the level of poverty? Is the internet connectivity good or is it poor? How is the access, for example, to the markets? Is it an area that there is conflict or good cooperation amongst the different ethnic groups there, the religious group or tribal groups there? And then is there easy access or barriers to key services like education, health, protection, and livelihood. So with the community mapping tool, it helps you to sit down, to understand your community and describe your community, so that if anyone was to ask or read your proposal, that they're able to think about, this is the type of community we have. This is the population of my community. This is what my community has, or this is the number of people that live in this community. These are the challenges my community has, and these are the strengths that we have in the community. So this is a very important first preparation that you need to think about as you sit down to write your project. And we'll spend some time, because I think we want to make sure that all of us, after this, we're able to leave this call having learned practical things or having strengthened the lessons or the knowledge that we already have. So we'll do a quick practice. And we will draft a very brief description of your community. And this description can be 3 to 4 sentences that explains where is your community. So the first question is, where is your community? You can describe that. How many people live there? If you have that statistics, you can go ahead, you can write it. If you don't have, that's also fine. And then who are the people in the community and what is it like living there? So we're really looking at the challenges and the strengths. So this is, as we mentioned in the beginning, this workshop has a lot of activities that we will be doing. And it's really important for us to participate so that we can get the best out of it. In case you also have questions on this, we can come to this. So the question has been put in the chat, and I think you can also see it on the screen. We'll just take some quick minutes to practice this. Draft a very brief description of your community, 3 to 4 sentences, and then tell us, where is your community? How many people live in the community? Who they are? Who are these people in the community? Thinking of, is it refugees and host community, men, women? Think about all the different aspects we talked about. And then also, what are some of the challenges you experience in your community? So we'll take a minute for us to draft. If you have a book and a pen, you can do it. If you're ready to draft it in the chat, please go ahead and drop it in the chat, and maybe we can read 2 or 1 before we proceed with the rest of the session. So we'll give us about a minute to just go ahead and draft that statement. If you have questions as well, we can take a quick question before we also, as people are drafting the statement. Anyone who's willing to share, please go ahead and post it in the chat. Not a requirement to post it. If you want to also speak, kindly raise your hand, and the communication team will unmute you so that you'll be able to share your 2 to 3 sentences on your community. And it's also a good opportunity to talk about your community. We want to understand where you come from. Have about half a minute remaining to finalize drafting your community. And I see 2 hands that have been raised. Sad, maybe you can go fast, and I'll ask us to keep our intervention to maybe a minute as we share our statement. Sad Udin, hopefully I've pronounced your name right. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's correct. Thank you, Fini. It's me, Sad. I'm an Afghan refugee. Our community is situated in the largest province of Pakistan in the east area, and the capital is known as Quetta. It's about 5 kilometers away from the city. It's completely like the population is majority are the Afghan refugees, and the less populations are the local hosts. The basic problem that they face, they have the access, the challenges are like access to basic health facilities such as basic health units, access to education, and poor internet connection exists as well. When the electricity collapses, then internet is not working at all. So these are a few challenges. Majority of the Afghan refugees are working in the agriculture sector. Few are having their small shops, doing businesses like selling small scale businesses that exist actually mostly in the refugee villages. So there's a small description of our community.
Thank you so much, Sad, for sharing that. I see Janvier, you've also raised your hand. Please go ahead and share with us your community.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to attend. I'm Janvier Hafasha. I'm a refugee from DRC Congo, living in Uganda, in Ichakatu refugee settlement within Western Uganda. About the community, we are around 13,000 refugees within the community, and the population of the youth it is 22%, age from 15 to 24 years. And the challenge we are facing in the camp is that there is still influx, whereby we are receiving new refugees who are still coming in. And the big number, it is women and children who are coming in. There is a big challenge of the food, whereby people are really struggling to access food because the support was reduced. We are now receiving around 13,000 shillings. That's around $5 to $4, and which is really hard for someone to survive and now be able to buy other basic needs for kids to go to school. And another challenge we are facing is the high marriage, like girls are getting married at our age, and sexual abuse because of the situation happening in the settlement. They're using it as opportunity to exploit younger girls within the communities, so that also these girls can be able now to meet their basic needs. So there is big gap in the empowerment to see how these people can be empowered, so that they can be able also them to sustain by themselves. That is the few now I can share for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sad and Janvier. I see one hand raised. We'll come back to that. I'll come back to you, Ellie, in the second segment. Maybe I'll read the one in the chat. And this is from Abdullahi. He says, my camp is the Dadaab Refugee Complex, the largest camp in the world. More than 500,000 people live there. Majority are from Somalia, Ethiopia, South Sudan. Challenges include new refugee influx from Somalia due to the drought and civil war. Also lack of basic information, restrictions in traveling. They are always optimistic and hopeful. It is in the heart of every refugee in my camp that one day they will make their way out of the camp. And what we're seeing right now, we've heard of 3 different communities. Thank you for everyone who's been able to share. Others, you can also share this in the chat as well. We've heard from 3 different communities. We've heard from Saad, based in Pakistan. We've heard from Abdullahi in Kenya. And we've also heard from Uganda, from Janvier, who's based in Uganda. all of them have been able to describe their communities. And at the end of it, I think we've learned something about their community because they've described all the different aspects so that you who are not based there are able to understand their community, the challenges that they face, and also the aspirations of the people within the community. So the first tool that is really, really important for you as you're doing the assessment is your community mapping, understanding your community and being able to describe your community through all these different aspects of what we've discussed: the type of community, the population, the challenges, as well as the strengths of the community. We'll move on now to the next tool. Next slide, please. And the next tool that we'll be looking at is called, is using a tool to the problem tree, and it's a step of analyzing your problem using a tree. I want us to think about a tree in the different communities that we come from. The tree has the roots, then it has the second part, which is the middle part of the tree, the part, and then it has the branches and the leaves. So essentially, this is the tool that we will be using to sort of like just understand the challenges that we have talked about, and also prioritize the challenges that we want to speak about. So the problem tree is a way of really analyzing a specific problem to understand how to tackle it. And it is good to do this activity as a group. And as you can see on the screen on the left side, we have a tree there. We had a good big paper and we drew a tree. We drew the roots, the middle part, and the branches and the leaves. So you can also practice this with your group as you're analyzing or as you're preparing to submit your proposals, for instance. The first step after you have like this paper and you draw the tree, the first step is to really spend some time and understand what challenges do refugee youth or any other group in your community face? Because we have multiple challenges. You need to sit down as a group and discuss. These are all the challenges that we face in our community. So you sort of like write all the different challenges, you list them down. Because we don't want to assume that the challenge that I feel is important is the only challenge, right? We don't want to assume that. So if you're doing this with your group, you sit down together and you list all the different challenges, because we don't want to assume that we only have challenges we knew from last month. Maybe there's a new challenge that has come up and we're not aware of it. So you need to spend some time to sit down and list all the different challenges. The second step, you need to pick one challenge that you want to focus on analyzing. And this is really important. We have multiple challenges that we face. The challenges as young refugees, you face challenges with access to education, maybe access to documentation, access to maybe jobs, access to, there's quite a lot of discrimination, there's the conflict, there's mental health. There's quite a huge list of challenges that we face as young refugees. When you do the first step, you list all the different challenges. The second step is you pick one that you want to focus on analyzing. Because we can't, if we have 5 challenges, analyzing all this or 15 challenges that you've listed, analyzing it will become very hard to really go in deeply and start looking at the root causes and all the different things that we need to focus on. So after you've listed all, step 2, you pick one particular challenge that you really want to analyze deeply to have a clear understanding of what you want to share in your proposal. So the first thing that once you pick from a list of maybe 20 or 50, once you pick one, then it becomes easy for you to define the problem statement in a very straightforward way. So for example, if I have a list that has documentation, education, health, discrimination, mental health, and maybe I have, together with the young people that we work with or I work with, we've discussed and said, out of all this, I feel they're all important. We're not saying that the rest are not important, but we can start with access to education. So instead of saying we want to solve all the challenges at once, we've decided that all these other four, they're also really important, but we want to really focus on access to education. So once you have that, then it's easier for you to come up with your problem statement. And your statement can be something such as, refugee youth do not have access to quality education. That's the first step. So we know that the challenge, the specific challenge you want to address is that refugee youth do not have access to quality education. So once you have this then will help you to go to the next step, because you've already defined the core problem. And once you've defined it, the middle part, which is the trunk of the tree, you write it down on maybe a sticky note and you put it there. We know that at the center of the specific problem we're looking at is the access, the refugee youth do not have access to quality education. Then this takes you to step 3. With step 3, it gives you now the opportunity to go ahead and discuss the causes that lead to this problem. This is a very huge problem, but what has caused this particular problem? Then you write it down on the sticky note, and this then you will post it or stick it on the roots of the tree, because these are the root causes. What are the root causes? Lack of safety, early marriage, language barrier, poverty, lack of school fees, discrimination, cultural beliefs. So you've listed down the main problem in our community is that refugee youth do not have access to quality education. The root causes of this are, we've listed it down. It can be lack of safety, early marriages, language barrier. So you write it down on your sticky note if you're using the problem tree, and you stick it there. So you're seeing we're building our problem. We're trying to be very specific and very clear, so that anyone who will want to understand the problem will know that this is the statement, this is our problem statement. And then the second step, these are the root causes. Once you've identified the challenge, the specific challenge, you've addressed the causes, then you get to step 4, which is really looking at the impacts of the issue that you have just talked about. As we know, roots, they go deep, they take nutrients, and then they go up to the tree. And once they get to the tree, they produce maybe fruits, if it's a tree that produces fruits, or if it's a tree that has leaves, the leaves will be healthy. Or if the root is not, if the roots are not taking enough nutrients, the roots, the trees or the leaves will be very flaky and it will be easy for the tree to die. So step 4 is really looking at the impact. So we've talked about our community has a challenge whereby refugee youth do not have access to quality education. This has been caused because of lack of language barrier, ABCD and all that. And the results, the impact of this challenge, this specific challenge, is that now we have seen vulnerable young people being sexually abused. We've seen dropout or young people dropping out of school. We've seen use of alcohol. We've seen the crime rate go high. We've seen pregnancy rates going high. We've seen low self-esteem amongst the young people. So essentially, you've already built your case. You've analyzed the many, many challenges, and then you've selected the specific one. And if someone was to ask you a question, you can easily, in 1 minute, respond and say, this is the challenge, this is the cause, and these are the impacts that it has led in my community. So step 5, you sit down and you take a look at your tree. So the tree, I know we're not in person, so virtually you can take a look at the tree on the left side. You take a look at the tree and you look at the analysis that you have done. You've really broken down the problem and analyzed it very critically. And now you know what are the causes and what are the impacts. So you're not just, if someone was to ask you, can you tell us what is the challenge? You'd be like, access to education. No, you're able to respond to them and say, refugee youth in our community do not have access to education. And this is because due to ABCD, which has led to this and this and this. So anyone will be able to understand and say, okay, the young people in this particular community, this is the challenge they're facing, and this is the impact that this challenge has led to. So you want to be very specific and you want to be very clear about it. So this essentially, the problem tree analysis helps you to think about the multiple problems or the challenges that young people are facing, pick the specific one, and then break down that specific challenge in a very clear way. So we'll now just do a quick activity and practice how to formulate maybe a short problem statement that in 2 sentences, think about the tree. If you think about the process that I've just explained, use it and practice it right now. So we'll take maybe another 2 minutes break to practice and formulate a short problem statement that talks about the causes, what is the problem, what are the causes, and the impact that it has had for the young people in your community. So we'll take another 2 minutes, and anyone who wants to share in the chat can do that. And then maybe we'll take one person who will share their problem statement. So if we can just do that, and the question or the pointers will be shared in the chat as well. So let's take 2 minutes at least to sort of like formulate our problem statement, and then we'll come back shortly. If you're ready to share it in the chat, please go ahead and share. In case anyone wants to also, we'll take one hand and then move to the next segment. We still have a bit to cover. Anyone ready to share their statement? If you have one. I see 2 hands raised. Let me see. I think Sad, you already spoke, so maybe I'll select someone who hasn't spoken. I don't know if that's an old hand. We have Sad and we have Jean-Pierre. Well, you've already spoken, Jean-Pierre. Maybe we'll give this to Ellie, Ellie to speak. Ellie, I think you had raised your hand previously. Are you happy to speak? If not, we can just take one quick example from Jean-Pierre, and then we can come back to the rest of the people who can share in the chat. Jean-Pierre, go ahead. Jean-Pierre, I think you're speaking while you're muted. If you could kindly unmute. Okay. Jean-Pierre might be having some connectivity challenges, so I'll go to the next person. Sad, go ahead and share your statement.
Okay, thank you so much. The core problem that I have highlighted is the low enrollment of the Afghan refugee students in the higher education institutes. That's one of the biggest problems that we have observed in our area. And the root causes for these are the uniform policy from the government sides and higher education institutes. They do not have anything in black and white. So how many refugees and in which institutes will they be able to select refugee students in the higher education institutes? So that's one of the root cause. Second one is most of the Afghan refugee students have studied in their mother tongue from the Afghan schools. So when they are applying for the higher education here in Pakistan, so they need to have equivalent certificate, and that takes almost minimum 6 months and maximum 2 years to get the equivalent certificate. So this has a very bad impact on the refugee students to get enrolled in the higher education institutes. The third root cause is the financial constraints. Most of the families are poor; they can't afford the huge tuition charges of the universities, so there are lack of scholarships as well, so they can't afford it. So most of the refugees after grade 12, they then drop out and they do not move towards the higher education, and this has very big psychological impact on them. Most of the refugee students who are able and who want to get chase their dreams, they are facing anxiety, depression, psychological problems. So these are some of the impacts. And secondly, the number of the unemployed people, problematic people in the community increases. Thank you. So that's from my side.
Thank you very much. I also see one from Abdullah. The main problem I can say is the lack of girl child education. The root causes parental carelessness in educating girls, traditional and cultural setback. The effects are many, including early marriage, SGBV, and early pregnancy. So as you can see, this is just another step. So we've already analyzed our community, and we understand our community. We get to the next section where we break down and select one specific problem so that we can easily communicate and anyone will be able to understand what the problem is. You break it down using the problem tree. The third tool that we'll move on to is called the vulnerability assessment tool. Next slide, please. And once you have an understanding of your community, you understand the specific problem, then you also need to conduct a vulnerability assessment. The purpose of the vulnerability assessment tool is really to help you to take some time to think about how people face additional or specific challenges due to their age, gender, or other aspects of diversity like disability, sexual orientation, ethnic group, are they child mothers, or even survivors of violence or GBV. These are additional challenges that can make it harder for them to cope, or even make it harder for them to access services, or even feel included. They may face discrimination or even violations of their rights. They may need certain types of activities to really help them. And when we're talking about this, we're looking at some of the specific examples. So for instance, you would ask yourself, you've already done the community assessment, you've done the analysis of the problem, and now you also need to understand, are there any additional vulnerabilities? And vulnerabilities can stem from multiple areas. So for instance, we have a young girl who is 13 years old, for instance, and then this young girl is displaced. So first of all, she's a child, and then she has been displaced. And then the second thing, so she's a child, she's a refugee. And then she, at the place where she lives, she's experiencing maybe gender-based violence. She's being abused. So that's also another layer of vulnerability. And then the other thing that she's also experiencing maybe is that she has been married off. So you see, if we don't take time to look at all these other additional vulnerabilities and we just focus on a refugee, then we will miss all the other things that comes with it, whereby you can find someone who is a refugee and they can also be someone who is maybe has a disability, and someone can be a young woman who has experienced violence or is a survivor of violence. So you need to also conduct the vulnerability assessment, and you need to think about how do we reach out to those people who have all these additional vulnerabilities. So some tips and things that we need to consider as we're doing our mapping and assessment is that we have to reach out to them. We can't expect them to come to us and say, I have this additional vulnerability. We need to be very proactive as young leaders in the community to understand, as we bring the assessment, how do we get all this vital information? We need to think about the different groups in terms of ages. We need to think about that as well. We need to think about gender, diversity, and all those other things. We can't say that we will think about young people only, we'll work with only young people who are maybe in university. What about the young people maybe who have not yet joined university? So you need to think about all the different groups in your community. And this is why the vulnerability assessment is really important, because it helps you to understand in-depthly who else is in your community. Then you need to make a list of the individuals and groups that work and support or represent even people with disabilities or any of the other vulnerabilities. Within your community, as you're doing your mapping, of course, there are those people you know who work with people with disability, survivors of SGBV, people who work with child mothers, people who work maybe with the LGBT community. So you need to ensure that you list down all these different organizations. Then how do we learn about the specific needs? So we can't assume that just because you have been working in the community or you have experience in the community, that you will always know their challenges or you will always know the specific needs. I have done my advocacy work for about 7 years, and every single time I always have to ask someone else who is facing an additional vulnerability, what do you think we can say? What do you think we need to pass across? Because I don't have the additional vulnerability, and I might not be able to represent it fully. You know, just because I speak or I do things, I might not be able to do it 100%. So what do we need to do? We need to ask them. Let's reach out to people with additional vulnerability and ask them. We need to talk to them to learn about what needs do they have. We need to ask them, how do they want to engage? Because we can't assume that we have a meeting tomorrow and it's a meeting on young people with disability and we bring all the young people with disability and we put them there. If we were to ask them, they would say, you need to think about how we can access that room, you see, or how we can access the meeting place. So we need to go back and ask them how we design this. If we're working on our proposal, we also need to involve them in the designing process. We've talked about the mapping and everything. As you're submitting your proposal, think about how will you involve other young people in your community or in your group so that they can design this particular proposal. Or if you have a proposal that is already working, how can they be part of it and how can they add comments and thoughts to what is already, what you already have. So you need to give them space as well to share their stories, to share ideas, recommendation, as well as their talents. So you need to make sure that you're able to really create space to intentionally ensure that young people who have additional vulnerabilities can participate and that you're asking them as opposed to speaking for them. That's a really important bit. And I think one example that we all share, we've talked about, as young refugees, most of the time people speak on our behalf. So as young refugee leaders, why should we speak on behalf of other young people who have additional vulnerabilities if we can ask them? And if they give us the go ahead and we have the opportunity to speak for them, then we can do that. So that's a really, really important aspect of the assessment bit. Document what you learn as well, so that in the project design, this can inform your description of your community, the problem statement, the expected results, and the activities. As you're doing this assessment, this will help you to think, oh, this is the problem, this is the challenges, these are the young people in my community. When you're coming to the activities, you'll not just think about activities maybe that excludes young people with disability, but you'll think about activity that includes them. You'll not think about activities that might not include child mothers. You'll think about how to include them as well. And with that, next slide, please. We have just come to, we'll move on to I want to do the quick activity. We've just come to, we've completed step 1. Step 1 is analyzing and understanding the community, the problems and vulnerabilities. We've gone through 3 tools, the community mapping tool, we've gone through the problem analysis, and we've also looked at the vulnerability assessment. Everything that you've learned from all this will help you to formulate the problem statement as you fill in the application. And most projects, either if it's the call for, we'll then move on to just a quick interview and spend some time and learn from Farida
about that. I think, yes, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, perfect. I hope you had me. I was just mentioning, could you tell us about, as you were doing the community mapping exercise, could you tell us what were some of the lessons you learned?
Chakatu is a rural area. It is remote and far from the main road and the nearby town. And also we're having 100,000 refugees, bigger than the nearest host. In different areas, there are protection houses for people with disabilities or older people and others, like single mothers who are in critical situations. In Chakatu, there is 150 churches, Muslims, on-reform mosques, and there are many refugee youth groups, but mainly the refugee groups, the leaders are men. Girls and women are not participating so much, and the offices of NGOs are very far from many of the zones where people live. Public transport is limited, mainly border borders, motorcycle taxis. So it is hard for people to move around.
Thank you very much, Farida, for that. The second question I have, with the problem, when you did the problem tree analysis, what came to your attention?
Child marriage. And the root cause is poverty. Poverty and unemployment in families. That head of families doesn't work. That is the root cause of all the other problems. They can't manage to support their children. Unaccompanied girls see marriage, prostitution as the way to support themselves. It is because parents cannot support to buy books and also sanitary pads or shoes. The impact is terrible. There is a lot of gender-based violence. Often when these girls marry at a young age, they marry a drunkard who is an old guy. Girls who get married and pregnant at the young age often have a lot of complications. And that girl feels uncomfortable. They don't feel like they fit in the community. They don't fit in within the girls, and they don't fit in within the women. They often drop out of school. Thank you, Fanny.
Thank you very much, Farida. The last question I'll just direct to you is in terms of the vulnerability assessment. What did you learn?
Youth who are living with disability don't get chances. At schools, they have no access to toilets, and in classes or stairs. This means they don't get the chance to attend school or trainings. Often they are not invited. And it is important to reach them at their homes to help them to be engaged so they can share their challenges and their special needs. LGBTQI+, they hide themselves. In Uganda, they are not accepting them. So they cannot ask to reach any organizations. And in the refugee community, that is the same thing. They have protection issues. They can't get documents and they face harassment. So they keep changing places because they don't feel secure. Thank you, Fanny. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Farida, for sharing that example. Next slide, please. As you've seen, we've just gone through slide one, step one, which is on the assessment. And for the GRYN application process, you'll see a couple of questions there. And step one will really help you to respond to the question that we've asked here. If you've already filled this form, please go ahead after this training. If you feel there's something new you've learned and you want to include, go back into the application and add it. If you haven't begun your application, please make sure you use these tools together with the other young people in your group to really just explain the problem that you want to address. With that, now we will turn to Simon, who will take us through step two, which is the project design, and we'll get to also understand what is involved in there. Thank you, and keep asking questions in the chat. We'll respond in the chat as well. Simon, over to you.
Thank you so much, Fanny. Congratulations to all of you for completing step one. So this is a reminder of what we have learned so far. So we have completed step one, which is the assessment. And now our second step is the project design, which is on step two. Next slide. So with the project design, it's really focused on making you focus your thoughts through the project activities, the expected results, and the aim of your project. What is it that you want to do to solve the problem that you have actually stated, or the one you have analyzed or you assess in the first step? So you start with the project aim, you define and explain what you are trying to do overall to address the problem and its root causes. Then your project may not solve all the problem, or it might not be the solution in your own settlement or in the community where you are living in. But it's just a step. It should aim at describing the solution, how your project is getting in the right direction to actually solving the problem that you have in your community. So after the project aim, you look at the project activity. You think through these activities, what actions you and your group want to actually take to try and move your aims towards the problem that you are solving. Then your project activity may not fully also reach the aim that you put together as a team or as a group, but it should help you move things towards the right direction in solving the problem that you have identified in your community. And then you think through and be clear on what impact you are trying or hoping to make by implementing the activities that you have in your community. So this is the expected result that you will be asked for in the project application. So implementing this activity may not also fully address or achieve the aim of your project, but they should actually help you achieve some expected results, which should be a step closer towards the aim of your project. Next slide. So as you think through the activity, the expected results, the aim, use what you have actually learned, what you've gone through right now from step one, which is the assessment. So everything that you learn through mapping the community, analyzing the root causes, and then the impacts of the problems, and then assessing also the vulnerabilities in your community will help you to design a better project that addresses the problems and is inclusive of diversity in your own community. So the problem tree is very important. The community assessment of the vulnerable community members is actually very, very important. All this come together to help you come up with activities. It also helps you to drive what is it that you are trying to actually solve overall, and then the expected results. And the next slide is, so then we have what we call storyboarding. So this is a tool that actually can help you to work through and clarify on the aims, the activities, and the expected results that you want to actually see in your community. It also helps you clarify and explain what support you need from others, from the youth that you actually be working with, because the support might not only be financial, you might also have community members that can actually be able to be good resource that you can actually be working with. So the storyboarding tool will help you to do that. So you start with a blank sheet of paper and write your problem statement across. As you can see on the slide, the problem there is young girls get out of schools and are idle and not able to actually provide their own for their family. So that is the problem. You put it across the paper, then you label it into label your paper and divide it into four boxes. Label the past as solutions. And then the second one you mentioned, you label it as what's support, what the VUs can actually do. Then the third one is what support do we need from others and from who and from where. Then the last one is now the positive impact that these activities can actually have on refugee youth, or the people that you are targeting with the project, or the community member that you're actually working with. So this is really work best if you draw rather than just trying to write words. Just other than writing words, if you try to actually capture it in pictures, because not drawing and using different parts. When you draw, it actually uses a different part of the brain, and it helps you also to be more creative. It also makes people think a lot and also capture the attention of people. So think outside the box, but draw inside the boxes. You don't have to be a good artist. Just draw how and actually try to express your ideas. So the first step is what solutions will you propose for this? That is in the first box. what are the proposed solutions? What things do you think can actually help you solve the problem that you've identified in your community? You draw them, and also be very specific and detailed as possible. This will help you like to formulate your aim. If you draw like the things that you can actually do, or the solution that you can do, it will help you like clarify on the aims that you want to actually put up in your project. And the second step is within your community. What can young people do? What can the youth do? The youth that are in your group, those that are also not in your group, what can they do to put these solutions into practice? You know that this will also help you like formulate activities in your own project. So the third step is now, in what ways do we need extra support to put some of these solutions into practice, and from whom you draw them, and then how this project funding will help. What other help also do you need, apart from the funding that we might get from GRYN or you might get from other sources? What other support do you need? Do you need space in your community? Can you identify that? Do you need technical assistance? Do you need mentoring? Do you need skill building? Do you need opportunities to also engage among others? These are the things. And then the last step now is the step 4. So if these solutions were implemented, how will they then improve the lives of the young people, the young refugees, or the communities that you're actually intervening in? Draw this. This will help you actually to formulate the expected result. Next slide. So now you use what you have actually come up with. Use what you have actually come up with in the storyboarding tool to help you like formulate your aims, the aims of your project. Define and explain what you are trying to do overall to actually address the problems and the root causes. This is the application, the GRYN application. So your project may not solve the problem, just like I said before, but your aim should be able to actually describe how this project is, in the right direction to actually solving the problem that you have identified in your own community. So put your aim in 1 or 2 statements maximum. For example, your aim can be like, maybe if you're trying to prevent child marriages in your community, you can say prevent child marriages and support young mothers to be financially self-sufficient so that they can support themselves and their communities and their families by helping girls to stay in school and also gain skills. So let's do a little activity. Maybe post on the chat here. Tell us what solutions are you actually proposing. Share with us what solution do you think can be help you to solve the problem that you actually identified in your community before in the assessment. What solutions, and then what young people can do to address it. Feel free also to raise your hand, and then I'll be able to pick you, give maybe a couple of young people to actually. Thanks. What do you think the solution to the problem that you have identified, and then what young refugees can do to address it? You can use the chat, or you can actually raise up your hand and then unmute to speak. Janvier Hasha, unmute and tell us.
Thank you so much. The problem I've identified in my community is that youth are not given a chance, like can't be heard, and there is a language barrier because they are from a country that speak French, and now when they reach in Uganda, it is very hard like to access services because of the language. They cannot understand the local language outside the refugee camp, and even NGOs within the settlement is very hard to give them jobs. So this challenge has resulted to poverty because the youth cannot access the needs for themselves, and it has led to addiction of different things like drugs, increasing of rape, because it's like they have nothing to do. They are just there. They can't do anything. Others, they end up even committing suicide. They feel like they are rejected. They are lonely. So the problem that results in is that those are the things that I have identified, and now even the poverty, because then they cannot access their only need is to be able to sustain by themselves, they end up doing those things. So the solution is to have the skilling program that can equip them to be able to come together. It's not only about earning or maybe to be sustainable by themselves, but even it is a way of uniting them, bringing them together as a youth to create the umbrellas that they can also be had as a youth in the community. So it is also easy to create the relationship within them. And in that way, it is a way of responding to their climate change within the community, because they will be doing some skilling that can create impact to the community and help the community also to help them. It's like integrated program that can help both sides. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Genevieve. So the problem is young people are idle, they can also not engage effectively in the refugee camp because they don't know the language, they can only speak French, they come from a French-speaking country. And the solution we are proposing is to actually have a skilling program where these young people can be engaged, and they also like added advantage by if you bring these people together and then they are trained, it also makes them to come together and be in a social, like, make friends and actually be make peace in the community. That is very good. Is there any other person, one extra person that can put up their hand? Or you can feel free to actually type on the chat here. And in case you have any question, please put it in the chat and I shall ask me to respond to it. Next slide. So now that you have actually used, you've worked on the storyboarding, you know what your activities are, you know what your aim and the expected results are, the aim of the project. Now you use what you actually came up with from the storyboarding to develop your evolve activities for your project. And this template, you will actually find it in the application form. You find a template and you also find this form. So think through what actions you and your group want to do and try to actually do, and then it will move you towards your aim. Your project activity may not fully reach the aim. So the aim might be a big one, it might be having an ambitious goal. But now your activities, even if they cannot actually reach towards the aim, but they should be able to actually help you move things in the right direction as you actually try to address. So identify what the refugees can do and then help them towards the solution to formulate your activities. If you come out with these activities now, use this template to fill it in. As you also think through your activity, next slide. As you think through your activities, make sure to use what you have actually learned from the assessment, because all these things are connected. From the community mapping, the problem analysis, and the vulnerability, they are actually very important. You cannot use one part and just leave it. They are all connected. So they all connect to the aim that you actually want to achieve with your project. So use the community mapping, the problem analysis, the vulnerability assessment, and also be very sure that you make the activities accessible for different people who have diverse needs and abilities. So your community might be having other community members that have different abilities. Make sure that you use all the assessment, the tools, the community mapping to make sure that activities are actually inclusive. So you ask yourself, how will you actually implement activities in a way that promote advancement of girls and women and support gender equality? That's the question you also like come across in the application, which is the assessment, the community vulnerability analysis that will help you to answer some response to some of these questions in the application. Then there's also how will you project reach marginalized youth or other vulnerable community members and how. So this your assessment will actually be able to help you to clarify on some of these questions. Then look again. Next slide. You look again at all the 4 steps, the storyboarding. If you look again at these 4 steps, if these solutions were implemented, how will they improve the lives of the refugees youth or the community members that you are targeting? You might not be targeting youth, but also the community members that you are targeting. How will their life actually improve? You can draw that, and then we will help you actually to formulate the expected results. And these are the things that you actually put in the application form. So the impacts are the positive steps that help you to move towards your aim. Maybe you plan to organize 6 football matches, or you plan to maybe have a tournament where there are like 8 or more teams playing. So what after organizing this the matches, what happens? What are the impact of organizing these matches on the community where they were actually held? Did the young people make new friends? Were there any aspect of how you implemented the activities actually that helped facilitate peaceful coexistence among the people in your community? On the young people themselves who got to participate, is there anything that changed? And also those who's maybe, and there are people who maybe sold handkerchief, maybe clothes or something like handmade items in the football ground. So other groups that had a chance to also showcase their talent, maybe through songs, maybe you had like open dance before the football matches. Those are the expected results, and these expected results are the bigger picture than just the activity that you're going to be implementing. Having the football matches is just an activity, but what happens with the activities when it is implemented? So, for example, if you teach someone maybe tailoring, the outcome is that they will they attended the course and they know how to tailor. But the expected result is that they know how to tailor, and they also have a skill that they can use to earn money. And the impact is that they can earn money to support themselves and their families. So this is beyond activity. You only do training for one person, but what happens after the training? Those are the things that are captured in the expected results. Next. So it's also very important to actually think through and explain how you will implement your activities. Use the GRYN project template to note down some of the big picture activities in your project, your schedules, or the timeline. Roughly, we don't need actually a full or accurate timeline. Timeline might change. You might say, okay, we'll implement our project in January. It might change to maybe February. You might want to have an activity in the first week of February, and then end up doing it maybe in the second week of February. So you just put out a rough schedule of your activities. Then the outcome of these activities, you also capture it in the project template. Then the estimated cost. This will with some detail, like how are these activities actually going to be implemented? What is the cost? So the first thing is the first step is to note down your main activities for you to actually complete this. If you note down the activities, the main activity that you want to implement, then the second step is for each activity that you estimate your work plan or the timeline. Just as an estimate timeline, a rough timeline, or the schedule for it. When will you do each activity? You will also need to have a more detailed action plan of who in your team will do the activity, when will they complete the activity, the plan activity, and how are they going to be, and how you and your team are actually going to complete it. So we just need to see an overview of when you will do what you say to actually you feel confident that you have thought through, and this will also give us the confidence that you know what these young people actually thought through this project, and it makes sense. So, for example, if you say you're organizing 6 matches, so that in the first week of October and November, or because now we're in October, this is now like the 3rd week of October. So if you maybe plan to do an activity in December and November, capture it there, like an activity in the first week of October or first week of November. We just need to see that. Then the third step is now the outcomes. What happens if you implement activities? Is it done? Or if you plan maybe 6 matches and organize them, what is the output? The output is that you organize 6 football matches that maybe 80 young people actually together and help them to get exercises they play. This doesn't actually speak to the impact of the activity. It's just saying that, okay, what you actually did what you said you will do. Then the fourth step is now for each activity, we also need to see a list of expenses in local currency. If you're in Zimbabwe, in Zimbabwean dollar. If you're in Egypt, it's the Egyptian pound, or Egyptian dinar, or Sudanese dinar, or you're using Kenyan shilling. So in each activity, you actually give us an estimated cost. How much is it? So you you will note that there are only 3 boxes for the activities that we actually send out to you there. But you can add more depending on the activity that you actually want to do. Just copy and paste on the table, and then you will be able to actually create more. Next slide. So on the application, we also asked you to estimate the cost for each activity as much detail as possible. So tell us what is the cost? What is this activity going to cost you? Is it $100? Is it $500? Is it $600? Capture that, and they can actually put the template for us. Next slide. So here is the example. Back. Take it back, Laura. Here's the previous slide. Thank you. So here is like an example of a completed activity or a work plan. So we have like the first activity, you say, football tournament to bring young people together from different communities. The dates are the first week of October to 15th of November. And then the intended outcome is young people play together and get a health exercise. Young people actually meet new people from other communities and Then the budget, which is also attached, is that so we were going to buy football jerseys, 100 people, and it's $5 each. That's like $500. You will also rent a field because most of you don't, most of the youth and the community members, they actually don't own the pitches that are in their community. The community owner will be owned by the host government. So, and you'll be able to maybe rent a field, refreshments, and then also transportation. Next slide. So we are expecting a lot of applications for the project. We're expecting a lot of application for project funding this year from different countries and all over the world. So with activities noted down in different currency, so other than pound, other than dollars, other than shilling. So this will even make our work so crazy. That's why we asked you to estimate the detailed cost in local currency, and then provide an overview of the estimated cost for each activity in local currency. And also, you give us like in dollars. So this will make it easier for us to actually have an estimate or to review the different projects that are coming in. If you're in Zimbabwe, if your money is coming in dollars and we don't know what that kind of currency is, it will make our work actually much difficult. But if you convert it for different activity and convert it to dollars, it will help us to review your projects. So we have a link for a currency converter that is pretty easy to use. Now is going to put it on the chart. So this converter will help you to on a daily basis. If you put let's say in the box that maybe Ugandan shilling, you want like 1 Ugandan shilling or 10 Ugandan shilling, the exchange rate is at 0.002 to $2. So that is, it will convert it automatically. So it will also help you, and you should also know that this rate change on daily basis. Even on Monday and Tuesday might not be actually the same rate, but it will only help you to calculate your activity cost to automatically convert it into dollars, which you can actually put in your project proposal. So that when it comes to our side here, we are able to actually know that, okay, this activity is going to cost 600, this one is going to cost 700. Or next slide. Next. So that is the currency converter. I think the links have been shared on by Laris. So you can also use a template. If you have a budget template, you can use a budget template or the Excel sheet that we have actually sent to you. The Google or the Excel that we sent is a bit more detailed, and it also include formulas that will calculate your currency or the cost automatically. If you're working on a computer, this formula will be okay, it will work. But the formulas will not actually work if you're using a phone. If you're using your phone, most of you use actually sometimes use mobile phones to apply or fill some of these applications. So if you're using a phone, it will not work. So we also need you to submit a budget that explains the estimated cost of the activities that you plan. You can use these templates that we have shared with you, or if you have your own format, you can actually send that one. Even just a picture or a handwritten of the budget is also welcome. Just write it down on paper and then you send it to us. Next. So think about your activities that you actually plan to do. What are the risks that you might face when you're actually implementing these activities? Because you're going to be in the community, you're going to be with young people, you're going to be with elderly people, you're going to be with different community members. What are the risks that you might face when you're implementing some of these projects? You are also in a community maybe which is restricted, where there are a lot of rules and there are a lot of how do you also, what risks do you think you're going to actually face? So in terms of how the activities are implemented, are there any risks in terms of protection for the participant, especially their children, their child protection mechanism? And there are also logistical challenges that in terms of transporting. Maybe you want to buy items in the town, transporting them to the venue. Maybe if you're organizing activities virtually, is there connectivity challenges in your community? Those are some of the risks that you might actually face when you're implementing your project. So are there risks that the work that you plan to do, so in terms of the timeline and also accompanies this activity as planned? Maybe it rains for maybe 5 days and it is very, very hard for people to actually come to the venue. Maybe you will not implement the activity as you are planning. So are there risks also in terms of the budget, having maybe not enough fund, or maybe a challenge receiving or using funds? Maybe it's hard for you to actually receive funds in your own countries. Like some project we worked on last year, it was very hard for us to transfer the fund. It would take maybe 5 to 3 days for them to actually sort some of these things out. So those are the challenges that we also asked you to capture in your next slide. So those are the challenges that we asked you to actually capture in the project application. So make a list of the risks and think about how you could actually minimize them or mitigate them so that they don't derail your project. And make sure to note this in your application so that we actually be in the know, and also we give you the necessary support that is needed for you to actually implement your project successfully. So don't fear to share with us the challenges or the risks that you actually foresee while implementing your project. The next slide. So I'm going to ask Connie to come again. I know you've been talking so much, Connie, today. Ask Connie to come again and also ask Farida some few questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see questions are coming in the chat. We're about to get to the Q&A. Please keep on posting in the chat. And some have been sent directly to me, but we're wrapping this up as well. So we'll have Farida come in and we'll just spend a quick minutes looking at doing an interview as well to understand. Farida, we have a few more questions for you based on step 2 and what Simon has just talked about. Could you tell us how you developed your aim?
Thank you, Fonny. After we talk to child mothers and we understand their needs, our aim is to help them to gain skills so they can earn income and be self-sufficient. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for responding to that. And how did you develop your activities?
I work with my team to come up with a short-term and long-term activities. And also we write it all down and what we are going to do in the first month, over 2 months or longer term activities that we need to work towards for 1 year. As an example, a short-term activity might be teaching a group of child mothers how to make soap, and it is a 1-day training session. A person on the team will identify the participants, for example, a group of 20 child mothers, and then plan what chemicals we need for 20 people to make soap. And we make a project schedule, who will do what and when. And then the expected results is for them to learn to make soap, for them to sell, but also to keep themselves, their children and their houses clean. This makes them feel good about themselves. And then we think we should add more activities. Do we add sanitary pads to help them maintain their hygiene? Or then they can be a role model to other child mothers in the community. Training on tailoring or hairdressing is the long term. We need to organize our training sessions over 8 months or 1 year. So we cannot stop there. Some child mothers want to go back to school. We have to go to the school to talk to them and help them out. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Second question is on risk. What risk do you face and how do you deal with them?
We discuss risk. The big risk is about the budget, and everyone writes to us saying that they want to learn, but there is not a lot of money to buy materials. If we go beyond our budget, we are at risk. It is not good, and it is better to always keep some money aside. And another big risk is expectation. Sometimes what we provide is not what they are expecting, and they are expecting a lot, but we have a little to give them. So we give them time and transport and help with facilitation to help keep them moving. Thank you, Fanny. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Farida, for the great example and for sharing all this. Just a quick recap before we share the questions. We've learned on step 1, which includes the assessment. And we have 3 tools: the community mapping, the problem tree analysis, as well as the vulnerability assessment. Then step 2 with the project design, we've talked about the project aim, the activities that you will be undertaking, the work plan that you will put into place, the costing of the different activities, as well as the expected results. So in a nutshell, these are the most vital things to consider as you're responding to some of the questions that we've addressed in the call for application. We'll spend some few minutes just responding to the questions and then hopefully end the call before we take too much of your time as well. Thank you for staying on. A few questions that have come through directly is, can the video be shared with us? Yes. So after this working session or this workshop session, the video for this particular workshop will be shared, including the slides that we've gone through today. There was also another question in terms of who can we ask questions if we're stuck with the application, and how do we reach out to you for support? To respond to that, we have the Refugee Youth Project email, which will be shared in the chat. In case you encounter any challenges, please write to us and we should be able to respond to that as soon as possible as well. Looking again at the chat, how many projects will be selected in total? Simon, do you want to come and respond to this? I'll bring the rest of the team to respond to the questions as well.
Yes. So the project is designed, our support is designed in such a way that we want to support as many young people or as many groups as possible. So we will really don't have like a specific number of groups or a number of projects that we're going to be supporting, but depending on how the young people apply and from different regions, using the criteria that we have stated before, we will aim at balancing like the regions. We also aim at balancing the countries and the different thematic areas that we're actually going to be supporting. So there are groups that are sending in projects in climate change, in health, in education, or livelihood, or psychosocial support, or community engagement, or sport. We will be able to actually support as many groups as possible. That's why we have like different ranges. We don't have like a maximum amount that we're giving to each group, but we want to aim at supporting as many projects as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. The second question in the chat is, do we have to include photos in the proposal? I don't think you need to include photos at this stage. But if you feel you want to include, you can, but this is not really a requirement. We've not included that as a requirement within the proposal. Next question, if an organization is operating in more than one camp, is the project allowed to be carried out in more than one camp, but in the same country? So Dadaab and Kakuma. Simon, I'll turn to you. We'll just keep on interchanging. Over to you, Simon.
So when you are applying, you should be able to actually state that the activity that you're actually implementing, they are going to be implemented in different locations. So you capture that clearly in your work plan. You also capture it in the activity that you actually intend to implement. Then now you add an element of location. So if an organization is operating in Kakuma, maybe you want to do a sport activity in Kakuma. When are you going to be doing it? You're going to be doing the same sport activity also in Dadaab. When are you also going to be doing it, and what is the cost? So you capture that and make sure that it's actually clearly stated in the proposal that you're actually submitting to us.
Thank you, Simon. Another question from Sad. Is it necessary that the project has to be from an organization that is led by refugees? Yes, that's one of our requirements, whereby we're calling for projects that are led by young refugees. So this is a criteria that we have included. But in case there's different aspects of it, we can discuss with you, Sad. But I think it's really important that we're trying to support refugee youth leadership, and this is the foundational basis of GRYN. And I know different organizations are structured differently, but it's really important for us to support refugee youth leadership. Another question, we also face sustainability challenges due to limited budget. I think this is a challenge or a question from Safia. Maybe, definitely, I think we understand that there's also the aspect of sustainability and the limited budget that comes to it. And what we're trying to do with this funding is really to scale up whatever initiative that young people have already taken into consideration and are working on, to see how this can be a stepping stone, and then of course apply for other opportunities that come up, not only through GRYN, but also through other places. This is a comment. I've learned a lot now, planning to submit my proposal in due time. Second question from Safia. Can a youth-led network submit more than one project proposal having different thematic areas? So maybe Simon, you can come in, and in case you have any thoughts around the refugee application, you can also share on
that. We aim at actually supporting so many groups, and we will not actually have more than 2 applications from the same refugee-led organization or refugee-led group or association. So it's advisable that you actually submit on one thematic area for the first, and then maybe in the future, if you also, or maybe if there are other sources or other donors that you can actually reach out to, then you can also apply for the next thematic, and then aim at actually how do they actually build on, the previous one. So you get maybe support from GRYN, and then are you able to actually continue linking it to the other team. So don't aim at doing a lot of things with the resources that you have. Aim at putting all your energy in one thing, and then as time goes on, as you build now your skill, as you build your capacity, you can now expand to other thematic areas, or others. As donors now see you and you're doing activities, then they can actually come and actually support you on the thematic area that you're thinking. So we're asking every group to send 1 proposal, not 2 proposals. And then the other thing is, if you're sending a proposal, don't aim at populating it with a lot of things, because that will also make it will make lose like the meaning if you're populating with a lot of things that you want to do. Because I know most of us refugee youth, when that is in our communities, and we always feel that we want to solve all of them. So we end up like putting all our energies in everything. So we end up doing a lot of things, but which are not effective. So try to actually put your energy in one thing and don't look at maybe populating your application with a lot of things, or a lot of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for that. I see there's also another question, and Simon responded to this in terms of how many proposals will the program consider. And I think, as Simon has mentioned, we've not set quotas. It's really on the needs that the young people have, and we work through them and see the capability that we also have as GRYN to take the different proposals. So we don't have a specific number that we're targeting at the moment. Hopefully, we'll see which groups are able to make it, and also depends on the region and the needs of the different young people, as well as the different thematic proposal that they end up sharing with us. There's another question on, can a national also submit his or her proposal? No. Currently, the criteria that we have is that we're looking, or the calls have been opened for young people who are refugees, so that we can ensure that they what's the word? We want to ensure that young refugees are able to really scale up the different activities, and in different situations, you'll also find that young refugees don't exist alone in the communities, and their projects also are benefiting the community, the host community. So the requirement is that we want to support refugee youth leadership, and of course, the way they're structured and the way they're responding in their community is different. We did have different proposals where it was led by young refugees, the members are young refugees, but then they were also, through the initiative that they were leading, they were also directly impacting the community. So currently we're just, the calls are just open for young refugees. There's also another question from Sad. In Pakistan, there is no organization led by refugee except mine, and I'm the only refugee working there as project manager. The rest are local people. Do I fall in the eligibility criteria? So one of the things that you'll also see is that with the projects that young people are coming up with, the call that we've opened up it can be a young refugee group that is either an organization that is registered, or it can also be an organization that is not registered. So you'll find that there's some young people who are responding in their community, but they're not necessarily registered, or they don't have, they're working to sort of like sort the different challenges in their community. So they can definitely apply for the call for proposal if they're registered, if they're not registered, and if they're working together to solve a particular challenge, they can do that and then submit the proposal, and then the GRYN team will review and work through that. So if yours is one of the organizations that is there, I believe that other young people are also there, and maybe they're not organized the same way you're organized, and maybe they're just a group that meet for particular causes. So what we would also ask us as young people here is to share this call for proposal with other young people in our community, so that they can also apply and definitely see what they have to share with us. The next question is agreeing to submit without having a memorandum of an article. Is agreeing to submit without having a memorandum of association or article of association. Yes, definitely. So you'll find that some groups have a memorandum of understanding, while other groups don't have a memorandum of understanding. And groups take different forms. You'll find students working towards a particular cause. You'll find they might not have a memorandum of understanding or association, while you'll find maybe another organization or young people who've come together and they have all this structure figured out. So what GRYN is trying to do as much as possible is to really meet the young people where they are. So some groups might not have this, it's fine. If you have it, it's also fine. You can share this with us. I'll come to the hands that have been raised and then come back to the chat. Maybe we'll take two more questions and then wrap this up. We'll start with Shamsa. If you could keep your intervention very brief, that would really be helpful.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I have my question is that I'm not yet leading an organization. So if I organize myself with other young people in my community, are we going to be eligible for the call? And if yes, how many should we be in the group?
Thank you for that. Saad, we'll take your question. If you could keep it also to very brief, that would be helpful. Saad, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I have got a lot of questions. Just I want to ask one more question that we are before 3 years we have formed a local community club which is mostly led by the refugees, and it's not registered, have no any association with any organization. Still, can we apply through that club for this proposal? Like majority, the whole groups are refugees, but it is not registered and has no any association with any organization. Can we apply through that instead of applying from my own organization?
Depending, and this is something that you can also discuss with your members and the young people you work with, so that it's an inclusive process and you've also taken their thoughts into consideration. So Saad, as you discuss with your members, you can see what fits and then go ahead and submit your application. If the group is not registered, they can still apply. If the group is registered, they can also still apply. So there's no restriction in terms of registration and all that. Coming to Shamsa, I know some young people are passionate about different solutions that they're leading and what they're doing in their community. If you're not leading an organization, but together with the young people, you're able to come together to really think about the solution or the problem you want to solve, please go ahead and apply. And we'll just use the different criteria to analyze the different proposals that the young people have shared. What we're emphasizing is that the project should not be your project, but really a project that has an impact in the community, and also a project that includes other young people. In terms of the number of young people, this is also something that we can, we would not put a requirement or restrictions on this. Once everyone submits their application, the team goes through each and every application, and then the decisions will be made on which projects will be selected. I think there's one more question. What if the leader is a refugee, but the members in the group are mixed, both national, host community, and refugees? Maybe I'll invite Simon to respond to this as we transition to the next segment. Simon, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Fonny. I think just like what Fonny said before, that refugees actually, in some instances, they are not staying alone. They stay with the host community, they stay together. And in the refugee settlement, or maybe when in the camps are located where the host communities are actually staying together with the refugees. So we understand that groups can actually be formed both by refugees and then the host communities. So as long as the leadership
I think Simon is frozen.
So it is very okay for us for them to apply.
You were frozen for a minute. I think you were frozen for a minute, but you're back.
Okay, thank you. So I was just saying it's very okay for the group to actually send in their proposal as long as we have a refugee in the leadership position.
Great. Thank you very much, Simon, as well, for responding to that question. We've spent quite a lot of time and we've taken an additional 15 minutes from your time, but thank you for sticking on and for asking the questions and for sharing your experiences. In terms of what you're seeing on the screen, please, that's the email that you can reach out to us to on. If you scan the QR code, if that works for you, you should be able to access all the different links that were available in the chat. The application deadline is 30th October, and we wish you all the best as you make your application. In case you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We also have other mini workshops in Spanish, French, as well as Arabic. If there are young people in your community or in different regions that would also benefit from using this particular mini workshop to prepare for the application, please share the links with them as well. The links will be included in the chat. Lastly, next slide. We have really spent some time just going through the session and sharing some of the things that we've learned along the way as well. And we'd also want to hear from you in terms of what did you like about the session, what should be improved for the future, as well as any other suggestion that you would have for us. From the GRYN team, I'd like to say thank you very much. Before we end the call, maybe you can just spend 1 minute to just respond to this question in the chat. This would really be helpful for us as well to prepare for the future mini workshops. That's all. We'll spend 1 quick minute before we wrap up the call. Thank you for the kudos to the rest of the team as well, for the comments that you're sharing. Give us another quick minute. Tell us what you liked, what should be improved, and any other suggestions that you might have. We've come to the end of our session. We will have a second mini workshop, and the second mini workshop will be looking at the next 2 stages. So we hope that we will invite you for this particular workshop so that you can also learn more about the implementation stage as well as the reporting stage, which then will make the project circle complete. So from the GRYN team, thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day and good luck with all your applications.